And good afternoon. My name is Ryan Belmore. It is Tuesday, February 7th, and just after 1 p.m. And my friend, sometimes my friend, I haven't bought him lunch in a while, so I think that is, it's been a little bit. So we haven't gone over to poor judgment, but we will get there soon. Maybe we'll bring our guests.
That would be a good thing.
Lunch. So we are
One
talking
of my favorite places.
Talking about journalism, news, lots of exciting things coming up here, Frank.
Oh, indeed. G. Wayne Miller joins us this morning. Wayne was a reporter at the Providence Journal for 41 years. He is involved with the story in the public square at the Pell Center. Written 20 books, a couple more on the way. Probably another 40 on the way, something like that, Wayne.
Oh, but God, no, please don't curse me, but several. Let's just leave it at several.
You wrote all the ones behind me.
Yeah, I do ghostwriting too on the side.
There you go. But very exciting. Tomorrow at, I think in the wee early morning, you're going to launch yet a new project, Ocean State Stories. But that should be, well, tell us a little bit about it and what exactly that is.
So sure. But first, let me just say I'm a big fan of What's Up Newport. Check it all the time anyway. So you guys
that makes one. We're starting somewhere.
There we go. Let's put that in the plus column.
You guys have a great site. So I appreciate that. So what's up Newport? OceanStateStories.org. As Frank said, it's going to launch tomorrow in the wee hours, probably 5 or 6 a.m. And it is a new journalism outlet initiative based at the Pell Center at Salve Regina University. And very broadly, what we are aiming to do is to tell the kinds of stories that many years ago newspapers and other outlets told frequently. At the Providence Journal, these are stories that really sort of distinguished my career. But with the decline in staff members at different newspapers, and this is not certainly unique to Rhode Island, this is a nationwide phenomenon or development. Those stories were told less and less frequently. So in a conversation with Jim Ludis, who is the director of the Pell Center, as Frank said, I've been story in the public square. I've been involved with Jim. I've been a visiting fellow there for almost 11 years. We do the national PBS show Story in the Public Square and so forth and so on. We began conversations last year saying, what might we be able to do to fill that void that is increasingly left as papers decline in number. Other papers become what they call ghost papers, which means they have a bare bones staff, if any staff at all. And other papers just simply go out of business. And so you don't have the manpower or even the outlet to tell those kinds of stories. And we came up with OceanStateStories.org. And we announced it in early November, which is when I left the journal, as Frank said, after 41 years. So we aim to fill that void. We will be having stories written by me as the staff writer, a staff writer there, starting tomorrow on Wednesday with the first of a two-part series on food insecurity around Rhode Island. And we've been very diligent and clear that we want to tell stories that involve all of Rhode Island, not simply, one community or one neighborhood or one city or one region. This is a site to tell stories of Rhode Island and Rhode Islanders, wherever they may be. Part 2, I would note, has a Newport angle, and part 2 will be published a week from Wednesday. So we're also going to be using freelance writers, which is something I'm very pleased with. We are now recruiting freelance writers. We will pay them for their efforts, and unlike some sites that do not. So we'll be paying our freelancers. I'll be mentoring young freelancers, including, we're hoping, some students at the University of Rhode Island and other schools as well. So I'm very excited about that. Mentoring has been an important part of my career as I, reach a certain point of experience. And Frank, you'll remember a number of people that I mentored at the Providence Journal, Mark Johnson, for example, now at the Washington Post, and a bunch of other people. So we will publish weekly at the start. We will have one main story. We will also have Q&A with leaders, community leaders around the state. And we start tomorrow with the new executive director of Rhode Island Kids Count. And so that's Paige Classius Parks, and we're very, very pleased to have her be the first Q&A. We have one coming up with Phil Chan. People will certainly remember his name from the pandemic. We also have an advisory board, and I want to take a moment to talk about the advisory board. Again, we try to get people who represent diverse communities around the state. And I spent a lot of time reaching out to the now members of our advisory board. These are people I've come to know through my journalism primarily. We have, for example, I'm going to give you just sort of a sampling here. We have Beth Bixby, who is the head of Tides Family Services. We have Elizabeth Burke Bryant, who is the former head, just recently retired, of Rhode Island Kids Count. We have Chanavi Che from the Center for Southeast Asians. Thrilled to have her. Rabbi Les Gutterman, who I think pretty much everyone in Rhode Island knows or knows of. Tom Heslin, Frank, as you know, he was an executive editor at the Providence Journal for many years, won Pulitzers, a great editor, great resource to have. Kendall Moore, who is a professor down at the University of Rhode Island. Tom Nichols, interestingly enough, he was many years at the Naval War College, and he left in the past few months to become a staff writer at the Atlantic. He still lives in Rhode Island. His counsel will certainly be appreciated. There's Tricia Rose, an African-American professor of Africana Studies at Brown. Sussy Santana, who is a well-known member of the Latina community. Loren Spears, who is the head of the Tomaquag Museum. And Padma Venkatraman, who is a best-selling author, originally from India. She lives now in Rhode Island, and there are a few others as well. So that gives you a sample of the kinds of people, or the people, really, who are going to guide us and advise us as we move forward here. And we're thrilled to have them. So that really is, a quick overview of what oceanstatestories.org is. And I'm hoping people will check it out tomorrow. We want to hear from people too. There's a very easy contact us button. We want to hear what we're doing right. We want to hear what we're doing wrong. The kinds of stories that our readers would like to see, contact us. We're brand new. We are wide open to suggestions. We want to learn as we go through, as we develop our site and grow it.
So I'm assuming you've written a mission statement, or at least you have one in your head. Mission statement and a vision statement. What would they be?
I'm going to read the mission statement. Give me a second here to find it. And this will be on the site. So let me read it, and I will right now. So our mission statement: Ocean State Stories is a new media outlet from Salve Regina University's Pell Center, serving all of Rhode Island and the many diverse communities that comprise our state. Publishing weekly at the outset, we bring long-form journalism on issues of importance to our statewide audiences in both English and in Spanish. We are nonprofit, and all of our content is free. Our focus is long-form journalism about issues that often are neglected or underreported. Stories that explore healthcare, education, public policy, socioeconomic and racial disparities and injustices, domestic violence, food and housing insecurities, the environment, ageism, suicide prevention, mental health, veterans affairs, and developmental and intellectual disabilities, among others. They will be told, the stories, that is, will be told with data, expert input, and most importantly, the personal experiences of Rhode Island.
Wayne, this is all in written form, or will there be audio and video?
Good question, Frank. To start, it's going to be text and photography, still images. Our plan is to relatively soon start to add audio and video components as well. So that is definitely in our planning. I think it's worth noting here too, we offered content free to print partners so that we can even broaden our reach. And I'm very delighted to announce that we already have 3 print partners who will be carrying our content in their weekly newspapers. And those are Beacon Communications publications, the Warwick Herald, the Cranston Herald, the Warwick Beacon, right. Sorry, the Cranston Herald, and the Johnston Sunrise. And those are all from Beacon Communications. Publisher and editor there is John Howell. And in fact, later this afternoon, I'll be going down to see John again and take a look at the layout, and thrilled to have him. And we're working on other print partners as well. Nothing to announce at this point, but I'm confident we will have more.
Well, John is an old friend, so when you see him, tell him I said hello.
I will, Frank. He's a great guy.
When I was in the Warwick office of the Journal, and then later the bureau manager, John was there all the time. I've never seen anybody who he was publisher, but he just couldn't give up the writing and editing end of it, and did a great job over time.
Yeah, no, and he still writes and edits. He does a weekly column. He covers meetings. He does photography. And I'll tell you, walking into Beacon Communications here in Warwick, it's like walking into an old-fashioned newsroom.
Right.
It's just it really brought me back in many ways. It brings me back every time I go in there. And as you said, John is just nobody better in terms of journalists here in Rhode Island. One other point that I need to make is people may be wondering, okay, so our content is free. We're offering it free to our print partners. We don't have any ads. So how do we do this? And we do this with the generous support of organizations and individuals. And I'll name some of the early ones, and we'll be getting more as time goes on, knock on wood. The Rhode Island Foundation is supporting us. Alan Hassenfeld, who is the chairman and CEO of Hasbro for many years and is the grandson of one of the founders, somebody who's been in 2 of my books, Kid Number 1 and Toy Wars. Al and Jerry Varecchia. Al also was a chairman and CEO of Hasbro and in both of those books. And Charlotte Metcalf, whose family for many years owned the Providence Journal. This, of course, goes back to the 80s and in years prior to that, going back into the 19th century when the Metcalf family bought the newspaper.
Wayne, when you first of all, for those people who may not be familiar, explain what you mean by long form.
Long form is in-depth reporting. You have a spectrum of stories that appear in newspapers. You have news briefs on the very short end, and they can be 1 paragraph, 1 sentence. Frank Prosnitz works for What's Up Newport, and yesterday he had a great lunch with Ryan, which was long overdue. News brief, okay?
And make sure you use that.
On the other end are the kinds of stories that you see in the New York Times, frequently in the Washington Post, and you'll see on oceanstatestories.org, which run much longer. A news brief may have, 75, 50 words. The stories we're doing will run to 1,500 words and longer. So you get a chance to really take a deep dive into issues that you can't do with very brief journalism. And it takes time to do, Frank, as you know.
Sure.
The reporting for part 1, food insecurity, which runs to part 1 of the 2-part series, which runs tomorrow, took me on and off, several weeks of reporting. It wasn't the only thing I was doing, needless to say. But, I had to go to West Bay Community Action. I had to go to Providence to a couple of places, and then do reporting by Zoom, and then photography, and then background information. I went up to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank and got data everywhere I went and incorporated the most important pieces of data, which is, numbers of people who face food insecurity every week or every month. programs that are available. And finally, as part of that package, we put together a little sidebar called food resources. So if you are in need of emergency need of food, or you're overwhelmed with bills for utilities, we write about people who were facing loss of housing if they didn't get help with food, because food, like everything else, has gone up in price, and healthy food is even more expensive. So these programs all help, and we have a list of places you can go depending on where you live in the state and what your need is to find out more, phone numbers to call. So this is a public service, essentially, Frank.
So I guess that part of that answers my next question, which you're dealing with these overriding issues, very important issues, and whether or not you're drilling down into the local communities in order to provide resources or information, or dealing with local issues that might be a spin-off of maybe a major issue that you're dealing with.
Exactly. We want, as I said, we want to provide public service to people. We want people to read and understand issues and perhaps be motivated to try to change things. But for people who are in need, whatever the need may be, in this case, it's food insecurity, but it could be people with, developmental disability needs, or mental health needs, or behavioral health care needs. When we run those stories, and they're on tap, they're coming up later this year, soon, actually, you'll be able to go to our resources page there and get help. For example, if you have an addiction issue, we'll have a link to Kodak. We'll have a link to the Samaritans when we write about suicide, which of course is a major mental health issue, and so forth. So I guess you get the idea with what we're doing here in terms of trying to help, or help people help themselves, or get help.
Tell me a little bit about the role of the advisory board.
Yeah, good question. We're going to meet periodically. We don't have a set schedule. The people I mentioned are incredibly busy. I'll give you an example. Lorenz Spears, who runs the Tomaquag Museum.
I know her well.
Yeah, she's one of the great people of the state. She's a Native American, obviously, and she is building a new Tomaquag Museum on land given to them by the University of Rhode Island. That's a huge, huge effort. It's consuming a lot of her time, in addition to all of her other responsibilities as head of Tomaquag, as a historian and educator, and so forth. So she wouldn't be able to come to a meeting, let's say if we had meetings every month, but she'll come when she can. We haven't set a schedule, but also important, as we move through this, as we write stories, someone on our staff may need some guidance from people, and they will be available to answer our questions, by email or by phone, and they'll be happy to do that because they're on our board. So we'll be able to pick up the phone, as I said, shoot an email, and say to Beth, for example, we've got an issue here with, housing teenagers. What do you think we ought to do? Who should we go to? What are our reasons? Who should we interview? And so forth and so on.
So I was talking with Terry Schwadron a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Former journal reporter, eventually a senior editor at the Times, deputy managing editor of the LA Times. And we talked about, the subject was evolution of journalism. And one of the observations he made was the reader was changing, that many readers now or viewers were being drawn to those outlets that only represented their viewpoint, and therefore were not as open as maybe readers of the past. I wonder, and I'm wondering how you think the long form holds up when so much of the readership is now dealing with Twitter and Facebook, and they know a few hundred words, but they don't necessarily know 1,500.
Well, another excellent question, Frank. I would note we will have social media channels. We have a Facebook page. We'll have a Twitter page, an Instagram page. So we'll put our content there, or links to our content there. But you're right. we live in an age where people get information in nuggets, in short bursts. People have, preconceived opinions. And then, of course, there's the whole world of disinformation and misinformation, which is a separate topic.
Huge.
So we'll be competing in that arena, is the best I can say, and we'll find out. We're hoping that, given the fact that we're going to include as many diverse Rhode Islanders, and when I say diverse, we're nonpartisan, but when I say diverse, and if were I to speak politically, people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle, we're going to include them as we deem fit in our stories. This is not going to be entirely, a certain cause or a certain group. We want to involve everyone because, I believe Jim Ludis believes, many, many people that we deal with, we've had this conversation on Story in the Public Square many times, that if you can move past, sort of the initial reaction that you might have when somebody is labeled, and listen to people, you learn things, and you can begin a dialogue and a conversation that can be really important. We have people on the right on Story in the Public Square deliberately for that very reason. We have a couple that were scheduled who are right-leaning, who we're going to be taping soon. That is critical. And I think it's not just critical to journalism, but it's critical to democracy, which is, I don't want to say our ulterior motive here. It's very much a part of what we're trying to do, trying to enhance or help democracy at the local level. Because, look, as well as I do, probably even better, we've got great political divisions here in Rhode Island. Some of them align sort of regionally. The western part of the state tends to be more right-leaning than the urban core, for example. So we're dealing with that issue here in Rhode Island. And I'm just hoping, again, I'm going to knock on wood. You can hear it. There's the knock on wood, that we can be a part of that solution, starting with listening, and then from listening, telling the stories.
There's a piece of this, and I look at all serious journalism, an opportunity or a challenge to re-educate the reader, the listener, the viewer, to be a little bit more thoughtful about what they are reading, what they're viewing, and also to be more diverse. I've often believed people have needed to read at least 3 newspapers, one on the right, one on the left, one in the middle, and then you go make your own decision.
I wouldn't use the term re-educate. That there's sort of a dogmatic tone to that isn't what we're about. But I would hope that people will check us out tomorrow and see what we're up to and come back. And over the course of time, give us 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, a couple of months, see what we're doing and see if it's to your liking and is helping you in any way, or absorbing you in any way, or even, I guess here we could even use the term, even educating you in some way. And, again, we want to hear feedback from everyone. If you like us, let us know. If you don't, let us know. What can we do better? What stories we haven't told or we should tell? I will personally answer all of these emails, and it's very easy to reach us with our contact button as noted.
Wayne, I'm presuming that you would encourage individuals to not rely upon one particular news outlet or information outlet, but to be open to multiple different sources in order to get different views from different positions, different priorities, all of that being important. And bottom line is helping us get through each day a little bit better.
Totally agree. I think you need to read a diverse representation of media. National newspapers are important. There are certain magazines that are important, and there are certain websites. But yes, to be what I would call, quote unquote, a good citizen, you need to have many points of view represented and read and draw conclusions from that. You cannot you know, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it anyway. You can't live in a silo. Too many of us live in silos, whether they're political silos or other types of silos. You know, the common good is important. The commonwealth is important. This is what we are as America. We have to keep track of, we have to remind ourselves, and we have to refresh our notion as we're all in this together. Wherever we live, whatever our point of view, we are the United States of America, and we're Americans. And the founders clearly had that in mind when they wrote the Constitution.
So I want to drift away for a little bit and then come back in the few minutes that we have left. But I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your latest book, Traces of Mary, and tell us a little bit about that. And that's got some pretty good reviews.
Yeah, it has gotten some good reviews, and for that I'm grateful. And if we have time, I'll read one of them. So Traces of Mary is unlike any other fiction I have written. It combined, and I've written a lot of fiction. I've written a lot of horror fiction. I've written a lot of science fiction, fantasy fiction, other kinds of fiction as well. This book combines all of those genres with an overlay of mental health. So all of these elements come together here. And the log line on this, the brief summary, Mary McAllister is the protagonist of this book, Traces of Mary. She had a difficult childhood. There was a horrible, traumatic event that happened when she was a kid that she has dealt with in terms of trauma, PTSD. But she has managed, despite that, and despite other things thrown in her way, she's managed to make a success out of her life. She has 2 children. One of them, in the course of the book, dies. And when that happens, it sends her into another place. What do I mean by another place? Well, that's part of what the plot is about. Did this event, the death of her daughter, did that cause her to become, or did it prompt underlying issues to become extremely mentally ill? In other words, is she really sick and really needs help in that regard? Or, as she comes to believe, as she's going through what might be called depression or anxiety, or really, you kind of name it, or does she, as she believes, think that she is possessed by an evil force from a distant universe, and that she is in fact in competition with her son, who she comes to believe, or did it really happen? Is she really possessed? She comes to believe is a force of good from the same parallel universe. And these 2 forces have been, over time, in conflict with one another. They have brought their war to Earth, and it will be waged between mother and son. If in fact she's possessed, or maybe it's just something that she's experiencing in the depths of her mental illness. That question plays out over the course of the book. As many events happen, some of them are quite unfortunate. The ending, not going to give it away. The ending, however, I think people will like. I think it, we get a good ending. Yep, there's the phone.
No, that's not paying attention to it. Just let it ring in the background.
So the title, Mary McAllister, obviously that's where the Mary comes from in the title. The Traces comes from a point when she is institutionalized at a psychiatric facility in Maine, and it comes when, in a session with her therapist and psychiatrist, when she wonders, is there even a trace of me left? Again, two-edged sword there, a trace of me, meaning has the Mary McAllister that used to exist now possessed by this evil force, or the Mary McAllister who is not well, extremely not well, gone, or what used to be, what I knew as Mary, me, gone. So that's, again, I'd love to give away the ending. I will say that you will not be displeased. You'll like it. It's a quote unquote happy ending, but it follows a sort of tortuous route to get there. Tortuous, not in the writing, please. That's not what I mean. It's a long journey through many places in Rhode Island. We have, this is a parallel to Rocky Point Park, where a horrible incident takes place. It's partly set in Boston, and it's partly set in Maine, in Blue Hill, which was the book before Traces of Mary, Blue Hill. You can see that I like Blue Hill, Maine, and I do. It's one of my favorite places. So that's
you were going to read a review.
Oh, right. I will. So this is a blurb from Mark Johnson. And, Frank, you remember Mark from the Providence Journal. He's now at the Washington Post. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author. He's written fiction of his own, very good fiction as well. But here's what he wrote. This big-hearted novel follows an enduring 11-year-old boy who must navigate his mother's harsh reality of poverty, grief, and mental illness. Along the way, he discovers a place where resilience and faith are rewarded, where the miseries of the real world can be overpowered by the benevolence of a fantastical universe. And let me read one more blurb, because I was so thrilled to get this. John Land, who is a Rhode Island resident, USA Today best-selling author. He's a great, great author. He wrote, and I quote, "Traces of Mary is a bold, bracing, blisteringly original hybrid tale that reads like Stephen King on steroids. G. Wayne Miller has penned a wild, psychedelic mindbender of a book that challenges our sensibilities, even as it hops across multiple genres with skill and aplomb. Call it horror, science fiction, mystery thriller, or anything else you want, so long as you call it your next must read." And I'm telling you, that I was so thrilled and honored that John wrote that.
What's next?
Well, what's next? Coming out later this year from Crossroad Press, who published these two books and many other of my books, is a novel that examines in novelistic form the state of media in America today, and it's called Unfit to Print, a Modern Media Satire. I just finished the hard copy. I've got to show you this, because I've just got to show you this. I just finished the hard copy edit. It's now down to Crossroad Press.
Ryan, you're muted.
I often am, Frank.
That's what your wife likes it that way.
Yes. She keeps my mic off.
So this is Unfit to Print. The last hard copy edit was the third hard copy edit I did. Obviously, I did editing in Word. And as you can see, let me, I don't even know what page this is, but it's got a lot of red. So I'm going to show it to you. So this is what you go through. You take the red pen out and you strike the purple prose and you try to, and I'm telling you, every time I've done this on every book, and I do it on every book, it gets better. At least I think it gets better. I cut so much purple prose and bad verbiage from this book in this hard copy edit that I'm glad I took the time. It takes a lot of time to do it. And I'm sure that David Wilson, who is the publisher of Crossroad Press, is going to agree. He's currently reading it now.
How many times do you think you'll read one of your books by going through that process?
Oh, God. 3, 4, 5. I'm working on another book, or I will soon get back to it, that I've been writing literally, and I'm not making this up, for 20 years. I've been writing this book for 20 years. And how many times have I read it? I mean, I can't even tell you. And it's painful at times to read and keep reading. And I hope to finish that this year, if not this year, next year. You got to do the hard work, you got to do the work. Unfortunately, as as much as imagination and creativity fuel us and are things that are our passions, there's discipline and hard work involved in this. And, you know, I say that to people who are interested in writing, young people who are coming up. You know, you got to be committed to doing it. You have to have a passion for it. And, you know, I've had a passion for writing since I was a kid.
Do you ever find when you start to reread a piece for editing that you decide to go off in an entirely different direction?
Almost always. and this book was a good example. You know, I did the first edit of Unfit to Print, well, the first draft rather. I finished that about a year ago. Believe it or not, about a year ago. It might even have been a little longer than a year ago. Finished the first draft, read it, and immediately had more ideas. And as the last year progressed, I had more and more ideas that stem from reading it, also stem from current events, because again, it's a novelistic depiction of what's happening in real life media in America today. So I always got new ideas. And the flip side of that is the bad ideas that were in the first draft or the second draft, the bad ideas got the boot. I cut 10,000 words from this in my final edit.
So, you know,
where's the applause? Like 10,000 words.
Applause, you got it.
Thank you.
You know,
I'm kidding.
So,
but
as we speak, you know, Ryan mentioned it early before we got on. As we speak, yet a new newspaper has evolved. Ralph Nader, small town newspaper.
Wow.
At the age of 88, he's becoming a publisher.
Wow, God bless him. Well, you know, look, this is where things are headed, I think. You know, you guys are in the forefront of where we're going with media. There are other, you know, organizations and outlets like Ocean State Stories. Some of them have inspired us. I've talked, you know, Vermont Digger, for example, which is now this big, great.
I know them very well.
They're great people. Yeah. And, you know, I was connected to them, and they cover the entire state of Vermont. And they've got a multi-million-dollar budget. They've got many staff members. They really do it all. I was connected to them. When I mean them, the head of their board and their editor-in-chief, by Charlotte Metcalf, who lives in Vermont and has long been a supporter of Vermont Digger. So I've been on calls with them and learned from them. We've been on calls with other people to learn as well. I think, you know, this is the direction we're going. So while there are news deserts and ghost papers and, you know, the hedge funds have, you know, killed so many papers and whatnot, there's maybe revolution's too strong a word, but there's something happening here. There's no question about it. And it's good. Mm-hmm. It's all good.
We belong to the same organization, local independent online news publishers, as Vermont Digger. You know, one of the things I wonder, we've just seen it with the Baltimore Banner, which popped up. We've seen it this week with a paper that popped up in Houston. You know, these organizations are getting started with $2 million, $5 million, $10 million in grant funds. And we're an old publisher at this point in the online world. We're 11. We'll be 12 soon. You know, a lot of us smaller guys wonder, you know, are you putting the kind of chicken before the egg or the cart before the horse or whatever you want to say? Because don't you think you need to go get that reader support before you could spend the money. You could spend money on any project you want all day, but, you know, isn't the reader support more valuable sometimes than the $2 million? You know, it's that balance. Yeah.
Well, there's no question it's a balance. I would say this: to start, you need the financial support to even get out of the gate. To keep going, there's no question you need reader support. I mean, if you spend a lot of money and nobody's reading you, then what have you done? You've spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, and that certainly is not where we think we're headed, where we want to head, and where we will do everything in our power to make sure we don't head. And which, again, is why our reader feedback is so critical to us. You know, get in touch with us, please, please, please. Let us know what we can do better, what stories we haven't written. We do have plans to grow, both in terms of staff and in terms of adding audio and video to our site. I was on a call with the University of Rhode Island professors recently, and they made the point, as actually Vermont did too, that audio and video is a critical piece of what you're doing. I mean, you guys certainly know that and have known that right from the start. So that's where we're headed. But I'm putting my heart and soul into this. Jim Ludis is, the staff at the Pell Center, the Salve Regina web team. All of us are putting everything we have or can into this, and let's hope we don't have any tech glitches tomorrow, but we won't, I'm sure, because we have a good web team.
5 a.m. tomorrow?
I think we're going to post at 5 or 6 a.m. tomorrow. Yeah, we're going to go live. If you go there now, there's a placeholder that says, check back on February 8th. But the whole thing will be up tomorrow morning. And I would especially like to hear from you guys. And, feel free to link to whatever content on your site that we have on ours. Be happy. Obviously, you can do that anyway, but would love to have you involved too.
Wayne, thank you much.
Thanks, Frank.
We're obviously going to talk along the way. And good luck with this. It's Ocean State Stories. And the website again?
oceanstatestories.org.
Wayne, I'm actually going to keep you for a minute here as speaking of tech issues, my mouse just disconnected and I just can't get us out of this. So while I try to do that, Rhode Island is certainly no news desert. State's newsrooms, I want to make sure I get that right, is also making their entrance into Rhode Island. Rhode Island has more. I would love for somebody to do this study of just how much media there is per capita. If you look at the weekly newspapers, monthly, the print magazines, the onlines, there's a lot of media, but oftentimes we're all chasing and telling the same story.
True. And my ambition is not to be chasing the same stories, to do stories that are underreported currently. I want to give a shout out to my former colleagues at the Providence Journal. They are doing a fantastic job, and they deserve all kinds of credit. So
under a lot of pressure.
Yeah. But they're doing fabulous work. I of course still read the Journal every day, but we are hoping that we are going to offer something that other people don't have, and that will be the reason to come back.
Well, one of the reasons I was bringing that up is also I think Rhode Islanders, all of these media options wouldn't be here if Rhode Islanders weren't supporting them and reading them. So I think that's a good place to start for any new publication.
Yeah, no, there's no question that's true. We're a pretty news immersed state, from Burrowville, where I lived for many years, to Newport, where I work now, to Westerly, and all points in between.
And extremely important. We the media as a watchdog over government and over what happens is sometimes it's tragic when it's not there, and sometimes it's exceedingly helpful when it is. And just hopeful that we can continue to carry on, continue to ask the questions.
Yes. Amen.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I am going to get us out of here.
Did you find your mouse?
No, I'm going to use another computer because.
Hey, look, Ryan and Frank, you guys need to come visit us at the Pell Center, and we'll buy lunch so that you two don't. You two don't have to fight over who's going to get whose lunch. Okay.
There you go.
We're right down the road from you. So, anyway, you keep up your own great work. As I said at the beginning, I've been a longtime loyal reader, and carry on. Have a great day.
Good luck with the Ocean State Stories.
Thank you.
And it looks like you're going to be delving into a lot of issues that are so important to so many people.
Well, I think we are. Thanks, Frank. See you soon.
Thank you, Wayne.
Bye-bye.
Take care.